Welcome everyone to my video. So this video is going to be about middle game tips, like, middle game planning, also evaluation. We are going to be covering that and why it's important. The main purpose of this series, and I'm honestly hoping it's just a never-ending series where I just keep pumping out, just little tips here and there, is so that because a lot of people question what to do in the middle game because the opening's done, what should I do in the middle game, and the truth is it really just depends on the position. So my hope is that I can help you evaluate certain positions for what they are and how to do that and how to create plans associated with the evaluations. So in the first scene of this video, after my little introduction, I will tell you the 4 elements of evaluating a position and how to do it, also why it's important. And then the next scene, the main part of this video, I'm going to show you a position from one of my blitz games, and we're going to break down, all the 4 elements, who's better, why why whoever is better, or why the evaluation is what it is, and ultimately the plan that I implemented based on the elements of evaluation. So with that said, just feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy this video, and I will see you on the other side. Alright everyone, so let's talk about the elements of position evaluation and why it's important. Now, these are very generic concepts, but I do want to shout out Gotham Chess. He does a good job of, just kind of recapping those on his videos and his courses as well. But anyway, so 4 ways to evaluate the position. Material, quite simply, who has the material advantage? Are you up a pawn? Are you down a knight? Are you, God forbid, down like 23 points of material, So who has the material advantage? Whose king is safer? Piece quality. I'll say for king safety, it's not just about how exposed your king is, but also how easy it is for your opponent to attack the king, or vice versa. Piece quality, who has the better pieces, and pawn play, who has the better pawn structure, strengths, weaknesses. So strengths might be, pass pawns, pawn chain, how you see fit, and weaknesses could be like isolated pawns, doubled pawns. I'd say kind of like with king safety, pawn weaknesses are only as weak as the ability to attack them, so you do want to keep that in mind. Now, why is position evaluation important? It's not important in your games to know, like, oh, is this position +2 or +5? I do want to make that clear. It's not important. However, evaluating the position will help you with your middle game plans, what to do in the middle game. That's a question I get a lot from my students and things like that, which is that, I know my openings, I know what to do, I'm now out of book, and what do I do? Well, if you're stuck, you do want to evaluate the position, and it's important on each individual level. So material, it's important. Like, if you're up a knight, maybe it benefits you to trade pieces. If you're up a pawn in the end game, you could easily, just trade into a winning pawn in game. Obviously, you want to judge that on its own, but every rule comes with its exceptions. But material, evaluation can be useful in that sense. King safety, so if your opponent's king is weak, then you sort of have a target to go after. If your king is weak, then, you just want to probably take care of it if possible. And as far as piece quality goes, that can be important on a number of levels. So, like, if you have a very strong knight and they have a bishop that stinks, should you trade the knight for the bishop? Probably not, unless there's serious tactical justification for it. And pawn play, so, if you have a strong passed pawn, you're able to, you could revolve your game plan around that passed pawn. If your opponent has pawn weaknesses, you could, just target them. Obviously, it depends on the position, and that's part of the purpose behind this video series. I'm hoping to just get a bunch of videos out there about, like, certain positions maybe I got, or maybe, like, my students got, maybe some of you got, grandmaster. I mean, really, who knows? But just any, like, generic chess positions, I just want to be able to sort of just record them, just kind of tell you the evaluation, what's going on, and hopefully by watching all these videos and just being exposed to chess in general, you'll be able to understand middle game plans more efficiently. So before we go into this, feel free to pause the video and think about what plan you would implement, and also try to think about who do you think is better and by how much and why. And While you do that, I will take a sip of my water. All right, so let's go through the 4 steps, assuming you've had a chance to pause. So materials equal, materials equal, you could count that yourself, but also chess.com tells you by your player icon whether you have a material advantage or not. So, you could easily determine that in an online game. As far as king safety goes, it's really optically, it doesn't seem that much of a difference. Their king is slightly more exposed as they have more pawns out than I do. However, as you will see later in the game, given the plan that I implemented, their king safety is going to matter. We'll just say that. As far as piece quality goes, so what I like to do with piece quality is divide it into 2 sections, just evaluate the major pieces and the minor pieces. The major pieces are the rooks and the queens, and or queen, I guess you could say, but in this position there are no queens on the board, so we'd evaluate the rooks. Again, optically it might not look like that much of a difference, and honestly I'm not even going to claim that my rooks are great. However, I think our rooks are slightly better than theirs. Their rooks are a little bit more passive, ours maybe have a little bit more open space, so I'd say our major pieces are slightly better. I'd say the minor pieces is where it gets glaring, because okay, we have 2 knights. I'd say our 2 knights are pretty good. They're occupying some good squares in the center and enemy territory. However, they have a good knight on d5, also occupying some squares. However, their bishop is terrible, because their bishop is on the long diagonal. It's on one of the 2 longest diagonals on the chessboard. However, none of that matters because they have a pawn on c6. They have a pawn on c6 blocking their bishop, and the pawn is blocked by the knight. Because in theory, if black could just play the pawn to c5 and open up the bishop, that would probably be good. Even if somehow they were sacrificing a pawn to do it, sometimes sacrificing a pawn or 2 to just open up your pieces can be worthwhile. However, my knight is just sitting there solidly on c5, which, by the way, it's hard to kick my knight, but yeah, my knight is sitting there blocking the pawn. So, I'd say as far as minor piece placement goes, we have a pretty sizable advantage. And last but not least, pawn play. Now, what I would say, and I'll probably go more into detail about this in a future video, but I think as it pertains to this position and most positions, I just look for strengths and weaknesses. And we have a pretty strong passed pawn on d6. It's a passed pawn because no enemy pawn can ever impede its route to making a queen, which can make it hard to stop and contain. Sometimes a passed pawn that's advanced can be weak because, if it advances too far, then you could lose it. However, it's very well supported by our knight on c4, and if I ever wanted to move it to d7, then it would be supported by the other knight. And even if my pawn is not queening anytime soon, it can still be a very good weapon, as it takes away a lot of key squares in the enemy territory. And in some positions, a passed pawn can really restrict you. And we don't have any glaring pawn weaknesses. I'd say the main weaknesses for black are these 2 guys. They're both isolated pawns, which means that a pawn in theory cannot defend them unless I did something stupid like knight b6, then they took, and then suddenly they have sort of a pawn unison going on. So in order, well, let me ask you this first. Given the evaluations that I gave, which just to summarize in like 10 seconds, I'd say king safety is about equal. We're slightly better, but king safety is about equal. Materials equal. Our minor piece placement is better, and our major piece placement is slightly better. So our overall piece quality is better. And pawn play, we have a strong pawn. They have weaknesses. So given that, why don't you pause the video and, 1, think about what do you think the evaluation is, like the computer evaluation is in this position? And 2, what plan do you think I implemented? And I don't remember. I might have asked this the first time, so if I'm asking this again, my apologies. All right, so if you've had a chance to look at it, the evaluation, believe it or not, is +4. Think about it. It's a +4 evaluation according to the computer, and it's equal material, which means that this position is approximately as good for this position is approximately as good for me as a normal position where I'm up 4 pawns would be. That's how I like to explain the computer valuation. There might be different kinks or whatnot about how it's actually done, but the position is +4, and the plan I implement, we're on a roll today, but the plan I implemented is noticing that they had the weak pawn on a7. They also have the weakness on c6, but now as I'm realizing it, talking about it, I don't even want to ever take the pawn because it would really activate their bishop. So I'm mainly after this weakness. And how can I get at this weakness? Well, my pawns aren't going to have an impact. My knights, they're well placed already, and even if they could, I don't think there's really a need to move them away. So I realized one of my rooks could just go to the 3rd rank and just target the pawn. Now, which rook? Very simple. If I go rook e3, they capture. So I have to go rook d3. And rook d3 is the move I played simply to go rook a3 and go after the a7 pawn. And if you really think about it, there's no way for black to defend the pawn. Remember the passed pawn I was talking about? It takes some key squares on the 7th rank, as does my knight. So all the 7th rank squares are taken, so they can't put a rook on the 7th rank just to protect it. So I played rook d3, my opponent played king f6, I went rook a3, going after the pawn, my opponent played g4. I think we both knew during the game that I was better, and my opponent was probably just trying to make moves, so I definitely understand that. I played rook takes a7, and to my opponent's credit, it feels weird to say when they're in a terrible position, but if they had left their king on g7, so let's say, they just, push their g-pawn, rook a3, we'll play a do-nothing move, rook takes. They had left their king on g7, you now start to realize how weak the king is, because my rook would be eyeing the king from the 7th rank, and I have a tangible threat to play knight takes e6, forking the king and the rook, and exploiting the pin of the f7 pawn on the 7th rank. So, that said, my opponent moved their king probably anticipating this, and my opponent in this position played king g5. They went a little bit crazy with their king, although to be fair, there's not much to do. I'm also threatening knight d7, forking the rook and king, as my knight is protected by my rook. So king g5 kind of sidesteps that. Now, just take a quick second. The position's developed a little bit. I'm now up a pawn. Their king safety is questionable at best. I'd say the pawn play and piece quality is about the same, although my rook has really taken a step up. What would you evaluate the position in this position? So if you have time to think about it, I'm only materialistically up 1 pawn, and it's +10. My advantage is so crushing. Once again, their bishop just stinks. My rook has gotten active. And I think most of all, their king is really in danger. And we'll see it play throughout this game. So I played rook e5 check. My opponent played king h4. A little bit ridiculous, just hiding the king on h4. And then after g3, they just went king h3. And you would think that there's a forced checkmate here somehow. While there's technically not a forced mate, there actually is a way to exploit the king's weakness, maybe with a mating pattern. So this will be the final pause. White to play. Now, I'm winning in multiple variations, but white to play and just put the game away. And it would take some calculation and some, tactical pattern recognition. So if you need more time, just pause the video. But the way to get at the king, I want a knight on the f4 square to checkmate the king. However, and the fastest way to get a knight there is to go knight d3, knight f4. However, the problem with that is that they have a knight that can just take. So what I need to do is I need to just sack my rook. However way they take, it does not matter. Next move, I'm going to go knight d3, sacrificing my other knight, and then knight f4 checkmate. We get a nice checkmate with our knight, and the king is just helpless. So that would have won me the game instantly. Now, as you can see from the time log, we're both in time pressure, and I knew I was just winning, despite, what I played. I played knight e4, and really just started to get a little bit crazy, like about here, when we were both just in a time scramble. I played the move f3, honestly just trying to do something. And if you look at this with the computer, black actually starts to get an advantage. It's actually kind of crazy. And my opponent took here. I believe the winning line for black is to take here. And if I take this way, my opponent goes rook f2, I believe. And there was some line, like, yeah, knight e4, check. And then after king f1, they have, like, oh, sorry, not rook takes d6, but I'm struggling to remember the exact variation. I know they could put their rook in, but also they could even play a move like pawn to c5, and then suddenly their bishop just opens up. Admittedly, I did not prepare those variations. If you want to look at this more on your own, I will link the game in the description so you can look into that. But anyway, I mean, we're both in time pressure. I also knew my opponent was playing very slowly, so I knew that practically my opponent was going down, you know. If I was playing, like, you know, Daniel Naroditsky and he found this, then I'd probably be in trouble. I mean, he has 19 seconds left, but ultimately it was a little bit of a crazy finish because of the time pressure. I played rook a3, protecting my knight. Then after rook f4, rook e6. You know, rook e6 just hung a knight, but he didn't notice it. He had 3.8 seconds left. There was no increment, by the way. That's very important. Then after rook e2, my opponent just ran out of time, but I don't know, I think this position... Oh, yeah, it's losing for me just because they can take the knight, but, you know, there's just nothing they can do, and we got away with the win. Well, that's about it. I hope you got something out of this video. You know, just, as always, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Feel free to give me any feedback, whether it be, you know, just about my speech or the layout or, you know, just who knows. We are, by the way, honing in on 100 subscribers, which in the grand scheme of things is probably not a big deal, but it'll be a little bit of a big deal, you know. So yeah, just feel free to subscribe, be that 100th subscriber, and as I mentioned previously, we will be pumping more videos like this out, and I will see you next for the next video.